name is Jace Holloway, and if you asked my family to describe me, they'd probably use the same words they always did. Quiet, too emotional, ungrateful. The problem is, people only call you ungrateful after they've spent years giving someone else everything right in front of you. I learned pretty early that my sister Emma and I weren't treated the same. When Emma forgot her science project in middle school, my dad left work early and drove 30 minutes across town to bring it to her because he didn't want her future affected. A month later, I won second place in a statewide writing competition. My mother forgot to show up. That pretty much summarizes my childhood. Emma was the center of everything. Her soccer games, her birthdays, her dance recitals, her moods, her problems. Meanwhile, I became the kid who learned not to ask for too much. Not because I didn't need things. Because disappointment gets exhausting after a while. By high school, the favoritism wasn't even subtle anymore. Emma got a brand new Jeep on her 16th birthday. I got a handshake and a reminder that real adults work for what they want. Emma's college apartment was fully furnished before classes even started. When I needed help buying textbooks, Dad told me responsibility builds character. It's funny how character development only ever happened to me. Still, I tried not to resent them. At least that's what I told myself. My grandmother, Evelyn, was the only person who ever noticed what was happening out loud. She never made big speeches about it. She just saw me. One Thanksgiving, when I was 17, she found me washing dishes alone in the kitchen while everyone crowded around Emma talking about her social media sponsorships and modeling opportunities. Grandma looked at me and said quietly, "One day you're gonna realize love shouldn't feel like competition." At the time, I laughed awkwardly because I didn't understand what she meant. Now I think she understood my family long before I ever did. She passed away during my sophomore year of college. Heart failure. Sudden. The funeral felt strange. Not sad exactly. Performative. My mom cried loudly in front of people. Dad stood near the entrance shaking hands like he was networking at a business event. Emma posted black and white Instagram photos with captions about grief and healing. Meanwhile, I sat quietly in the back feeling like I was the only person actually mourning her. A week later, Dad sat me down and told me Grandma left a trust fund for my education. Around $90,000. Not life-changing millionaire money, but enough to graduate debt-free. Enough to breathe. I remember feeling relief for the first time in years. Finally, something existed that belonged to me. Dad said there were temporary banking complications and estate delays. I believed him. Months passed. Every time I asked about the trust fund, there was another excuse. Tax paperwork, transfer issues, legal delays. Eventually, I stopped asking because every conversation somehow ended with me feeling guilty for bringing it up. So I kept working instead. Coffee shops, warehouse shifts, food delivery, overnight stocking jobs, anything that paid. Meanwhile, Emma somehow always had money for vacations, beauty treatments, and influencer events. Still, I ignored the weird feeling in my gut because sometimes denial feels safer than truth. Then Christmas happened. The Christmas that finally destroyed the illusion. My parents' house looked perfect that year. Huge tree, designer decorations, expensive candles burning in every room. Emma's white Tesla sat outside in the driveway with a giant red bow on it, because apparently even cars needed holiday photo shoots now. The second I walked inside, Mom looked at my coat and frowned. "You still wear that thing?" That was her version of hello. Dad barely glanced up from his whiskey. Emma hugged me with one arm while holding her phone with the other. "Wait," she said, "don't move." She snapped a selfie. Perfect Christmas content. That's who my sister was. Everything existed for attention, even family. Dinner felt normal at first. Emma dominated every conversation while Mom laughed too hard at everything she said. Dad looked at her like she personally invented success. Every time I tried joining the conversation, the energy shifted immediately. Short answers, distracted nods, silence. I'd spent my whole life feeling emotionally edited out of my own family. Then came the gifts. Emma got diamond earrings from Mom. Dad got a ridiculously expensive espresso machine. Mom opened a luxury spa package and nearly cried from excitement. Then suddenly everyone looked at me. Emma smiled first. That fake sweet smile she always used before saying something cruel. "So," she said slowly, sipping wine, "we actually decided not to do gifts for you this year?" I blinked. "What?" Mom jumped in immediately. "We just think the family's already sacrificed enough financially for you." Dad nodded like he was delivering life wisdom. At some point, accountability matters. I sat there holding wrapped presents I bought for them using money from overnight shifts, while my own family explained why I deserved nothing. And something inside me finally snapped, quietly. Not dramatic, just final. I looked around the room. The marble countertops, the expensive wine, the matching holiday pajamas, the giant family portrait hanging above the fireplace where I somehow always looked emotionally photoshopped into the picture. Then I smiled. Calm. Controlled. Dangerously calm. Actually, I said softly, I brought you guys something too. Mom looked relieved. Instantly. Probably thought I was letting it go like always. That's the thing about families like mine. They mistake silence for weakness. I reached into my coat and handed Dad a white envelope. He opened it casually. Then his face changed immediately. Mom leaned over his shoulder. Her expression drained too. Emma frowned. What is that? Nobody answered her, because inside that envelope were bank records. 10 years of withdrawals, transfers, and transactions connected directly to the trust fund Grandma left me. My trust fund. Dad stared at the papers silently. Mom whispered first. Where did you get this? I leaned back slowly. The real question is why you thought I never would. Emma grabbed the papers next. At first she looked confused, then annoyed. Oh my God, she scoffed. You're seriously doing this right now? I ignored her, because for once this wasn't about her. Dad finally cleared his throat. You don't understand financial management. No, I interrupted calmly. I understand theft pretty clearly, though. The room went silent instantly. Heavy silent. The kind that makes a beautiful house suddenly feel cold. Mom's eyes filled with tears immediately. Classic move. We were protecting the money, she whispered. By spending it? Nobody answered. Because they couldn't. I reached into my coat again and placed a second envelope on the table. This one's from the forensic accountant. Dad looked genuinely shocked. You hired an accountant? CPA, actually. Emma crossed her arms. This is so dramatic. I finally looked directly at her. You knew, didn't you? She froze slightly. Tiny reaction, but enough. You knew they were using my money. Her face hardened immediately. You didn't need $90,000 at 18. I stared at her for a long moment. No, I said quietly. But I needed parents. That hit harder than yelling ever could. Mom actually flinched. Dad looked away. And Emma stopped talking completely. I stood slowly. Every ignored birthday, every minimized achievement, every moment of feeling invisible, every time I convinced myself I was imagining the favoritism. It all stood in that room with me. Dad's voice turned cold. So what now? You gonna sue your own family? I looked him directly in the eyes, then smiled slightly. Already did. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the Christmas music had stopped playing somewhere during the silence. Mom grabbed the kitchen counter. You sued us? 3 months ago. Dad stepped toward me aggressively. You ungrateful little... No, I cut him off sharply. You lost the right to call me ungrateful when you stole my future to finance hers. Emma looked pale now. Actually pale, because for the first time in her life, consequences entered the room, and they weren't leaving. I pulled out one final envelope. This one isn't legal, I said quietly. It's personal. Inside was an old photograph. Me at 18 standing outside my high school holding my Northwestern acceptance letter. Smiling like someone who still believed his family wanted him to succeed. You told me we couldn't afford tuition, I said softly, then looked around their luxury kitchen. But somehow you could afford remodeling this place that same month. Mom started crying harder. Dad stared at the floor. Emma said nothing. And honestly, that silence told me everything I needed to know. I grabbed my coat. This is the last family holiday I'll ever spend here. Mom whispered my name desperately as I walked toward the door. But I didn't stop. Because sometimes healing doesn't begin with forgiveness. Sometimes it begins the moment you finally stop accepting disrespect as love. Outside, the freezing air hit my face. And for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't leaving home. I was escaping it.